welcome to another episode of Women in Leadership series. And today we have Sarah Tolfrey, the head of data operations at JaJa Finance. JaJa Finance is one of AWS's customers in the financial services industry, and they are digital-first, ethical, insights-driven lender with focus on simplicity, functionality, security, and service. So, hi Sarah, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Could you please share your professional background and your current role at JaJa Finance?
Absolutely. So I started off in my early career in operational roles, so probably the first 9 years working in import and export collections, payments, letters of credit, and moving into exchange traded derivatives, so more of a brokerage function with clearing and execution fees, very much back office. Always in financial services, but kind of very different to what I do today. Following a career break, having my children, I sort of realised the workplace wasn't well set up for returning to work. I took the opportunity to do voluntary work, both as a member and chairperson on various committees, doing risk assessment, fundraising events, planning and organising, which was really rewarding. And I went to do a maths degree then. I hadn't had a degree before. I did my degree in mathematics. And coming out of that, I then joined my first fintech, and I've since worked at several fintechs, including I had a gap in the middle to do a year of teaching, and have returned sort of into the fintech space again, all within data roles, and most recently joining Jaja Finance as their head of data operations in January.
So, Sarah, what has inspired you to pursue a career in the data industry?
I think probably I had the skills and interests all the way through, sort of through school and through my early career, but I probably didn't realise it at the time because it wasn't something I knew about. And when I joined university, the first year is predominantly compulsory modules, one of which had a coding element. And as much as learning to code initially was quite frustrating, I found it really rewarding. I enjoyed sort of solving business problems, the optimizations around that, and generating business insight. I was very fortunate at university. I was just introducing a data analytics set of modules. I chose to do a lot of those as my optional modules in subsequent years, took opportunities to attend events and sort of realised that was where I wanted to be, which led to me sort of looking for roles in fintech coming out of university.
Okay, that's nice. And could you please share some of your career highlights which have helped you advance in your career and some of the challenges that you've faced?
I think in my early career, definitely one of the highlights was obtaining a supervisory position. I was quite young at the time. It felt like a really big landmark in my career. It was a big step up, and I really enjoyed that experience. And I think that sort of resonated with me. Definitely taking my career break, I really enjoyed obviously having a career break. My children's been great, but I found it quite challenging trying to go back into the workplace. It really wasn't set up for commuting into London with 100% office time in many roles. And I think that kind of inspired me to actually think, well, I'm going to build my education and go back to university. What I hadn't really anticipated was how challenging it would be doing a degree without A-levels and with a young family. It was certainly some of the sort of the highs and lows, juggling that workload and managing to achieve the grade that I finally got. But coming out of the end of that with a first and 2 awards, one being the Maths Society Award, which is a Greenwich specific award, and the other being with the IMA, which is the Institute of Maths and its Applications for Academic Achievement, I think really felt like it was worth all that hard work. Certainly obtaining my first fintech role was a huge pivot for me because it was traversing so much of the data space and gave me a real breadth of knowledge, which I used to sort of leverage forward. I've subsequently had highlights working as a mentor and on advisory boards. And I think in the data space and in many spaces, I've found it quite challenging being a working parent, and I'm sure other people experience the same challenge. But also, I found it quite challenging making sure that it was recognised that whilst I was back in the workplace, I still wanted a career, I was still ambitious, and I was still looking for those opportunities, and that can be quite challenging. I'm lucky now that I work in an environment that is empowering, and I've subsequently got 2 mentors now, which has really helped drive me forward in my career, certainly.
That's really nice, Sarah. And you've talked about mentoring people, right? So what was your first step towards finding a mentor, say data analytics space or data industry?
I think probably, if I'm being honest, it wasn't something I ever considered. I've always helped other people succeed. I've always sort of given my time up voluntarily, either sort of unofficially or officially. But I think what I haven't done is considered actually my development opportunities. I didn't know what was available. And I think it was from sort of being a mentor as part of another scheme for other people early in their data career that I realised how much value that would be for me as well. And I actually leveraged the platform that I'm already part of in order to find a mentor for myself, which has been hugely rewarding, and is somebody already in the data space. But actually, I also outreached to somebody else that I knew who wasn't in data, but is in the leadership role, to sort of gain a different perspective from a different industry. So I've sort of taken a dual approach.
Right. So what would your advice be for young people who are very early in their careers and are wanting to find mentors?
I think there's multiple directions you can take. I mean, one thing I think is really good at the moment is there are a lot of free opportunities to be part of mentorship programs. And there's quite a few. I mean, I found sort of the direction of travel for me. They actually are on LinkedIn as well. And I think that's a really good platform for finding mentorship opportunities. I think that's one direction. Definitely attending events and meetups, meeting people and sort of outreaching directly. There's also, I know people who've taken that direction. I think that's hugely successful. People are very generous with their time. You know, very fortunate in the data community that people do give up so much of their time. I think other opportunities are, there are workplaces that have that framework set up, which you can lean into. You know, I've outreached to people that I've worked with previously as well, when I've been sort of working through various things. So there are multiple opportunities there. And I definitely think, you know, take those opportunities. People are always willing to sort of help and support.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And what do you think are the skills and competencies that are required to be successful in a leadership role?
I think one of the key ones for me is listen to the business. And that's not just the business as its entirety in terms of kind of what the direction is, but also the people embedded in the business, not just in the data space, but across the wider business. Really helps understand what other teams' challenges are, how data can play a part in supporting that. Or if it's not a data space that you're in, really listening to other people's challenges and building that collaboration. I think that's been hugely powerful for me, certainly. I think problem solving, I tend not to come to things with a sort of no. I come with other solutions, other directions with that trade-off between different solutions. I think that's very important as a leader, to empower other teams to succeed. And I also think that continuous learning and development, I never feel like I know it all. I'm always looking for opportunities to gain greater understanding, to revalidate what I know, and to grow with the data and the technology space.
Okay. Okay. So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that the data industry are facing today? And what are you doing in your role to overcome them?
That's a really interesting question. I think some of the biggest challenges are the pace at which the space is moving. So I think keeping up to date with the changing landscape, both economic and just generally in the technology and the data space. For me, I'm always constantly learning, always learning from other people, both within my current role and by attending other events. I listen to a lot of podcasts, I read a lot of articles, and I'm really interested in the space. And I think that helps keep up to date with what's going on. I think kind of being relevant with the tooling that you're using. There's a lot of changes in the tooling that's out there. I'm always keen to see kind of what's new, what's coming up, how that could lean into what I'm doing at work. There are also other sort of challenges. Data governance, I think, is really prominent, making sure that you've got that at the heart of what you're doing, especially with the rise of AI and that kind of direction of travel. It's really important to have the right guardrails in place.
Right, yeah. I have heard that JaJa Finances built a generative AI tool called Ari. Could you please talk about it a little?
Absolutely, it's been very exciting. We've now launched our tool, so it's Gen AI. It's a chat assistant. Essentially, we are one of the first UK fintechs to have launched a chat AI assistant with Gen AI using Anthropic's Claude 3. We're now actually in Claude 3.5, which is really empowering. I mean, there's the obvious pieces to it in that there's a cost save there, it's increasing speed. But actually, it's really enhancing customer experience with a 90% reduction in those customer response times. We're answering customer queries in 15 seconds, sort of under 15 seconds versus 3 minutes before. So it's a really exciting time for our customers and for us as a business.
Yeah. So, could you please share your thoughts about the future of data industry and some of the things that you're excited about? Obviously, the Gen AI that is helping, and some of the things that you're concerned by.
I think the rise of AI and certainly seeing more usage of it this year across the industry, I think that's a really exciting time for the data space and the opportunities. I think with that certainly comes the concerns. I know I touched on it before with regards to data governance. I think with the right guardrails, it's very empowering. I think we need to make sure that we always remain sort of ethical and considering those guardrails. So I think that's certainly one of the challenges that's coming for sure. I think other exciting times in the space is certainly there's a definite change with the sort of value addition of data and sort of more about delivering that value rather than just tables and reports. And there's some really interesting tooling out there now where we can work collaboratively across businesses to leverage the power of data.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. Could you please share your advice for young women considering a role in data industry, and also maybe some advice about pivoting to data industry, how you did from teaching and studying?
Absolutely. I think as a young female coming into the industry or for any young person, there's certainly a need to understand the different roles. And I think the data industry is a space where a role of the same title can mean something very different in different spaces. Don't be afraid to change within a role and to kind of experience that. I was fortunate in my first role that working for a fintech, I had that breadth of experience. Seize the opportunities that are there and don't be afraid to pivot whilst you're within. There are many roles within a data function. Some of them might be more interesting than others. I think there's also a tendency as a female to need 100% of the skills on a job specification. Take the opportunity to apply for things. There's a lot of transferable skills that are really relevant for data, particularly some of the skills I used in my earlier career. I didn't realise the crossover. I mean, even as down to sort of the points of teaching has been really valuable for time management, for engaging audiences, for presentation. A lot of skills in completely unrelated industries are actually hugely valuable in the data space. So I would say take those opportunities, talk to different people in industries. If you're not someone who likes to attend events, there are some great online communities as well. Lean into that to get some ideas as to what there is and take that leap. It's a very rewarding space to work in.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Could you please share JaJa Finance's plans to attract, retain, and empower women?
From my perspective, obviously, I am a female as a head of data operations at JaJa, so certainly kind of had that opportunity myself to go in there. And I think when you're interviewing for your team, certainly having that representation in that interview process, it's naturally you have more of an affinity then to when you're being interviewed by a female as a female. I think there's an element of that to it as well. I think not relying on one channel to engage with people for of the application process. So there is obviously the organic applications, but having a good partnership from a recruitment perspective, having the right tech partners for that who understand the business and how it works and what you're trying to achieve as a business. But I think from a retention perspective, it really comes down to the culture. And I'm really fortunate to work somewhere that has that flexible and empowering culture, which is really supportive. I feel empowered to do my job and my team do as well. We work in an environment that has that element of support and the right level of communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree about representation and the flexibility. And Sarah, lastly, do you want to share something that we have not covered yet?
Yeah, I think I definitely say if you are considering a career change, take those opportunities. I've done it several times. I've actually found it's been really beneficial. I've enjoyed all of the phases I've been sort of part of in my career. There's nothing that I would change. There's been some challenges, but I'd certainly say take the opportunities that are there. And if you don't like a change you've made, there's always another change that can be made, but lean into the community. It's a very rewarding space to work in.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your time today, Sarah. This conversation has been very valuable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching.